Do you hear the Disney princesses singing? Because Wrexham just got promoted. Yes, the Hollywood team is actually getting it done on the field in the English lower leagues. They have officially clinched promotion from the 4th Division of England to the 3rd Division of England. They did it with a massive 6-0 win over bottom of the table Forest Green Rovers, and that puts them firmly in second. And being in second is good enough. This isn't Ricky Bobby. If you ain't first, your last does not apply here. You have to be in the top 3 in order to gain automatic promotion to the 3rd Division of England, and that is exactly where Wrexham is headed. And according to this guy, Joe Pompliano, it is the first time that Wrexham has been promoted in back-to-back seasons in its 159-year history. What is happening here is incredible. A lot of people have a lot of hot takes on it, like, Zealand, you look a lot like Rob McElhaney, or Zealand, you look a lot like Rob Reynolds, and other various hot takes. And I think a lot of those hot takes actually kind of missed the mark. Jokes aside, I've got some hot truth bombs I'm going to try and drop in on here. Because as impressive as Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhaney's wealth is, it is very impressive and far beyond what the average person to be able to grasp. We are starting to enter the realm in terms of club ownership where it is relatively not that impressive. But yet, Wrexham continues to succeed, right? They continue to drive their way from the National League to League Two and now into League One. And I think it is time to give those two dudes their due, because this could have gone so much worse. This could have been such a catastrophe that it would have set back U.S.-England soccer relations for decades. But instead, it's turned into a Disney story with the birds singing and the princess and the dress flowing in the wind. And I haven't seen a Disney movie in a while. I don't know what happens. But imagine this scenario. You've got two guys that are painfully American, Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds. That's not the last time I'm going to do that. And McElhaney is just getting into soccer, and he's kind of falling in love with it. And then he starts to try and get his friend Ryan Reynolds into soccer. And because one's a TV star, one's a movie star, they have the money to go, hey, do you want to actually buy a club? Right? They're not the first Americans to do this, to be sitting around, and the tidal wave of Americans getting into soccer is a pretty significant tsunami at this point. And they went, let's buy a club. Now, they don't know a ton about the sport, particularly relative to the people in the area of Wrexham, right? A club that has had a succession of bad owners up to this point, that's got this decrepit old stadium, right? There's just a general malaise amongst the town, an antagonistic relationship with the club at this point because it's hurt them so many times. And you introduce these two happy-go-lucky Hollywood movie stars, and they come in and they change the leadership of the club, they change the coach, they promise all these big changes as long as the club succeeds, and then it falls on its face. I mean, the animosity that would exist in a town like Wrexham and in the general Welsh and kind of English and UK understanding of what was going on at Wrexham and how ownership from these guys that don't really understand the sport was a bad thing and Americans don't know ball and this and that and everything, that would have snowballed. That would have gotten out of hand very quickly. It's important to remember that because it feels now, and a lot of the narrative is now that this is kind of inevitable and that almost what Wrexham is doing is unfair. I don't think it's unfair. I think Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds are actually way better at being club owners than a lot of other club owners because while they do have, particularly Ryan Reynolds, a lot of money, right? Nobody wants to go into these ventures and lose a ton of money. The way that they've managed to actually escalate this club and build this club is through marketing. Probably the best marketing of any club I've seen. Obviously, it was very notable, and they hammed up how notable it was that they were buying this club. And even before the purchase of the club was finished, these two dudes have a plan. They had a plan. Right? I've not even finished the first season of Welcome to Wrexham, so I'm a little out of my depth trying to talk about that show too much. But I do know that in the first episode of the show, they're already recording an episode of the show while they're meeting with like the town club council to try and decide whether they're able to purchase the club from a fan trust or not, right? They were set to go with the show immediately. And the show worked in a couple of different ways. Because one, it provided a ton of notoriety, millions of eyeballs on a team in the 5th division of the English Football League, which allows them to get sponsors like, as Joe points out here, United, Expedia, etc. Big name sponsors that want to be in front of all those eyeballs. And it also works on the players, because players were starting to be willing to come down in order to be a part of the show, in order to be a part of the circus, or in a more, perhaps more endearing way, to be a part of the story. I mean, Wrexham is one of the oldest clubs in the world, and I think Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds identified a club where they could really build, they weren't going to go to MK Dons here, right? They were going to go to a club where they could build out a story of resurrection. Right? These are two guys that work as producers, directors, and actors. They understand a good story, and they found one. I mean, now, of course, they're emotionally wedded to Wrexham in ways that would never allow them to leave, or at least for a long time, right? Because they just love Wrexham for being Wrexham. But at the time that they're looking for a club to purchase, I think they did it very intentionally, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, as they picked a club that they felt like had the potential to be more. And they picked a club that they felt like would have a great story to tell the American people and the world that they were trying to market this story to. Because the success of Wrexham is all based on the fact that everybody knows who Wrexham is, right? Nobody, especially if you're talking about the United States, probably can't name another team, except for maybe Notts County from, the Welcome to Wrexham chase for the title that was going on before, another team in League Two. That is a monster advantage when it comes to financial incentives like the sponsors, and also to the player recruitment that I was hinting on earlier. Players wanting to be involved in that show. Maybe just even wanting to meet Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney and just being a part of that story and that team. I mean, you had a goalkeeper that was playing in the Premier League a year ago that was willing to come all the way down to the English 5th division to help battle them back up into the Football League. I'm looking at you, Ben Foster. I did love that, by the way. I thought that was really funny that Ben Foster agreed to do that. And it's just an example of how good these guys are at what they're trying to do. Because Wrexham is now climbing into a stratosphere where the amount of money that Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds have is not an advantage at all, right? Relative to some of the clubs that they're even going to be running into in League One, they're not going to be the wealthiest owner at that level, but they're still going to be able to attract a lot of the best players and a lot of the best coaching staff. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds also did something that a lot of people find very, very difficult to do when they end up in this position, that makes them really great owners, separate from the narrative that's built up around Wrexham and this inevitable manifest destiny Disney story type thing that's going on. And that is, they hired, with this money and notoriety that they had, they attracted and hired very talented football people, scouts, coaches, directors, and they let them do their job. They did not over-meddle. Right? That is something that you get very early on in the show, is they're going to bring in these guys and they're going to trust these guys to do their jobs. And if you ever look at stories of successful owners, they provide two things. They provide great vibes, right? An attractive atmosphere, all that stuff. You've got that going on with the documentary and everything else, and the fact that they're Hollywood movie stars, and they let the people that they hire do their job. Be a great talent identifier. You bring in somebody that's accomplished a lot and you let them do their job. And they've also been present. It's not like these guys aren't busy, right? They've got a lot of other stuff going on, but they have been present. They are, really, really behind the team. And when somebody is so notable that they are the face of your club internationally, and then they're showing up at the stands of this 4th division team, it adds and bolsters. You can feel it even when you're watching Wrexham matches, this kind of wholesome community atmosphere, everybody realizing they're pulling in the same direction, the fans of Wrexham almost fascinated by these Hollywood stars' interest in their club, the Hollywood stars almost fascinated by the tribal nature of lower league English football. I can speak to that. I have been to 2 lower league English matches in my entire life, and it was a fascinating experience. There is nothing like it in the United States. It is a completely new experience. It is intoxicating. I went to a Taunton Town match, the team I managed on Football Manager last year. We took them all the way from the 6th division to the Premier League, a la what Wrexham's trying to do right now. And I went to one of their matches in the 6th division, and it is wild. There's no assigned seats. There's like barely any security. Everybody knows everybody. There's mad trash talking being thrown around. The fans are moving depending on which goal their team is going towards. The beer is flowing. The food sucks, but is also good at the same time because it's like wholesome food. It is intoxicating. It is some sort of throwback to a bygone era that the United States just does not have. The closest comparison I have is like a high school football game in Florida or Texas is the closest you can get to that vibe. But the kids are kids. They're 14 to 18 years old. These are adults from these towns. And it's also, you can't go up from high school football and then win a couple games and get to the NFL. You're in this ladder. And there's always this existential dread that you're going to go back down, but also this rampant hope that you're going to go up, this intoxicating, it's like a drug, this hope that, we just win a couple of games, we'll be right there. Next season we're going to bring this guy in and we're going to be right there. That's what everybody will tell you about. That, or this guy's going to be gone and we're going down for sure, but they're going to root like hell for their team anyways. And that is something that Rob McElhenney and Rob Reynolds have been not only swept up in, they've added to. Because as the fans are watching these incredibly famous people, right, particularly on Ryan Reynolds' side, right? If you don't watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Rob McElhenney is more of a background character. But in watching these incredibly famous people live and die with every chance that's happening with Wrexham, I think that's kind of the magic third component that they bring. Because the vast majority of clubs, they barely even pay attention to their owner, and their owner's not really involved as part of the optic of the club. They are. In a very, very positive way. Usually when the owner is involved in the optic of the club, it's a very negative way, right? Like Die Young at Reading or something. But they are involved in a very positive way. And you combine that great vibe that they create, letting people do their job, and then you also add in the financial aspect of the documentary and all the sponsorships that they're able to bring in to make all of this happen. I am incredibly happy for them, for the city, that they were able to get promoted. I think that what is happening is fantastic. I think that it is also going to inspire a flurry of investment in the English lower leagues that will show just exactly how difficult it is what they have managed to do. Because having to slap a team together out of thin air and having to actually turn around the vibe of a club like Wrexham, that's like trying to unwedge the ship from the Suez Canal. It takes time to shift a community's attitude. It does not happen. It does not happen overnight. But now that ship is out of the Suez Canal and it is flowing full force towards the championship and, dare I say, maybe even the Premier League. But if they can keep up this marketing, if they can keep up this excellent vibe and continue to attract talent beyond what they're normally able to have, I think the championship is well within reach. If they can make it out of the championship, it's time to start talking about these guys as some of the best owners that have ever existed, because that's going to be a whole different ball of wax. But I think they could get into the championship next season. I wouldn't be surprised. And to be perfectly honest, a part of me, because who doesn't love a great story, is rooting for it. It would be cool to see Wrexham actually manage to pull it off. I would honestly love to even go to a game, but that's part of the allure. The fact that I'm sitting here and saying, I would love to go to a game. I don't know. I'm not familiar with any of the other clubs in League One and whose of those games I'd want to go to. But I'm sitting here on this channel talking about Wrexham and talking about how I would like to go to a game. And that in itself sums up the wild success that these guys right here have created for Wrexham. Just a wild, one-of-a-kind sports story that long may it rain, long may it roll.